It's the morning of November 1st, and chaos has broken out as communist groups launched 70 coordinated attacks across the country, catching the nation by surprise. This is not a prediction for Civil War 2.0, nor is it the basis for a prepper fiction novel. This is exactly how the Algerian insurgency kicked off back in 1954. And it is the topic of this week's Gray Zone Intelligence because there are parallels to what's happening today in this country. Now, the Algerian War for Independence was fought between 1954 and 1962 when the French finally capitulated and granted Algeria its sovereignty. On the other side, against the French, was the National Liberation Front, or the FLN. And one of the most important insurgent tactics the FLN used to defeat the French was social power. So there's hard power, things like guns and armies, the credible threat of force or coercion, and then there's soft power, things like political, social, and economic power, moral authority. And if you study low-intensity conflict long enough, you study insurgencies and guerrilla movements and popular revolutions, then you will find that these conflicts are never won without soft power. And in many, maybe most, maybe even all cases, soft power is more important than hard power. Because in low-intensity conflict, it's not the guy with the most guns who wins, but the guy who can bring most people to the fight. So the FLN began organizing these local social groups, and they became the cells that eventually built a national insurgent network. Every city and village had soccer clubs and youth groups, women's groups, workers' councils, farmers' groups. These were organizations run by the communists that marshaled the social power of the local populace. And then that social power was weaponized against the French. So in addition to creating social power, the FLN also used these groups to run intelligence collectors who would pass on information about French military movements and civil activities, as well as information on French sympathizers. The FLN borrowed a strategy from the Viet Minh, who were at the time also running circles around the French in Indochina. In 1954, French General Marchand made these observations about the Viet Minh organizing strategy. He said, quote, "These communist organizations constitute the new basic cells instead of the family, and family devotion has been replaced by duty towards the party." Because the Viet Minh and Algerian insurgents both focused heavily on organizing the people, the French counterinsurgents struggled to maintain contact with the local populations that they were trying to recruit and organize. So how do you make friends with people in villages and cities where 75% of the people already hate you and the rest are intimidated and often suffer violence for even speaking with these French soldiers? This was a problem that the French never figured out. I think alienation of the population for this and other reasons is the strategic reason why they lost, even though they were often tactically successful. Does that sound familiar? One of the things that Marchand tried in Indochina and his successors tried in Algeria was to counter-organize against the communists by creating pro-French social groups. And the French even created a new intelligence unit in Algeria called the SAPI in 1956 for the express purpose of building inroads with locals in key areas. They were never able to garner enough support to turn the tide against the pro-independence communist movements. And that was a key factor that forced the French into a strategic retreat in 1962. So what can we learn? One reason why I continually discuss the importance of building soft power, that is political, social, and economic power, is because it's one way to make some areas impenetrable for foreign involvement, however you want to come to define foreign. People are censors. In the army, we said every soldier is a censor because every soldier had an obligation to pass information up the chain. And our communities are no different. As an intel guy, I look at each of my neighbors as a person who can actively or passively gather information. And they are gathering information all the time. The question is, what are they doing with it? And in a time of conflict, if they're passing that information to anyone other than you, then you are probably losing. Organizing is an overlooked aspect of preparedness, and counter-organizing is one way to defeat the political decay spreading across our country. Counter-organizing and accruing local power enables you to use that soft power against the political decay. And you cannot use power that you don't have. So I encourage you to look for ways to build political, social, and economic power at the local level. It is your level of local organization that's going to enable you to keep the bad stuff out and keep the good stuff in.